Hello there. If you have a business analyst interview coming up shortly, then this is the video for you. Over the last 2 years, we have published several videos on business analyst interview preparation. We have merged the key questions into this single video. We have covered 80 plus questions ranging from stakeholder management, requirements, agile methodology, SQL to testing in this video. This video is ideal for your preparation just the day before your interview when you are short of time for it. Go over this video and attend the interview with confidence. The video is split using chapters for easy navigation to your interested section. If you have not already subscribed to our channel, please go ahead and subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon. We have lots to cover, so let's get started. Do you have a business analyst interview coming up shortly? If so, this is one of the videos for you. In this video, we are going to cover the top 8 interview questions pertaining to stakeholders. Identifying and engaging stakeholders is the vital part for the project's success and one of the key activities for a business analyst. And hence, interviewer would be keen to know the list of stakeholders you have interacted with, how you identified them, and also the challenges you faced while interacting with them. We are going to cover these questions in this video, so stay tuned. If you have not already subscribed, please go ahead and click on the subscribe button and the bell icon so that you are notified when we post a new video, and we post regularly on business analysis interview prep skills and techniques. Okay, we have got a lot to cover. So let's get started. As always, we will use a simple case study which will make the concepts easy to grasp. Rahul is a BA working with a client running a restaurant called Vegan Gardens. The client is looking for a mobile app which will allow their customers to book a table. Let us use this simple case study and see who the stakeholders for this project are, how to identify them, and the challenges faced while interacting with them. Question 1. Who is a stakeholder? Stakeholder can be defined in simple terms as a party who will be impacted with the change. They can be classified under 2 categories: who receives the benefit and who will deliver the change. Who receives the benefit? These are the end users, customers, business unit managers, operation team manager, and so on. And who will deliver the change? This is the project team ranging from project managers, developers, testers, trainers, and so on. Moving on to question number 2. Who are the list of stakeholders you have worked with? This question is asked by the interviewer to know the depth of your interactions. We can cover the various stakeholders here. Again, look at from our classification earlier. For the first category, who receives the benefit? It comprises of business unit manager of the unit which gets benefited. In our example, it would be the sales department manager who would be benefited by this change, as it would help to streamline and ease table booking for the customers, which should result in increase in the number of visitors, boosting sales, and also help in saving cost by reducing the number of people allocated for taking phone reservations. The next would be the customers. In the example again, the customers who have to call and wait for making the table reservations can do so just with the touch of few buttons in their mobile and can get a table booked with instant confirmation sent to them. This solution would also benefit the staff at the hotel who are also using the staff end of the application for viewing the customer reservations. All the manual tasks for checking the availability and making the list of reservations for the given day have all been automated, and this results in increased staff efficiency. Subject matter expert. They are usually part of the business unit operations team who have been working on the current system and process for a considerable amount of time and are usually experts and can provide guidance on the current state and also help to identify problems and provide recommendations on the target state. The last category is regulators. They are regulating body who ensure compliance. In our example, they may not be appropriate, but just wanted to list as they are also a key stakeholder. So, as part of the requirement gathering sessions, the above stakeholders are your key people you need to engage and gather the requirements, as you would be working to satisfy their needs and objectives. Coming to the next category, who delivers the change. This includes the business sponsor who is responsible for funding and delivering the change and is your key stakeholder to engage when you are stuck or you need guidance, and also sponsor would help in identifying the stakeholders. Next, we have the support business units like legal and marketing units. They will also provide further guidance on shaping the change to ensure we are covered from all the angles. The rest of the people are what is generally termed as the project team. Project managers can be one or more based on the scale of the project. They ensure the project gets delivered as per the deadline and are responsible for the plan. Then we have the developers and testers to develop and test the software in accordance with the functional requirements. Lastly, the trainer who is responsible for training the staff with a new system. In our example, trainer can be a senior person in the staff who would be responsible for training the staff with navigation and working of the new system, and also creation of standard operating procedures. BA works with them by providing working screenshots of the system and also help to draft the standard operating procedures. This covers more or less the list of stakeholders, and when you are explaining, you can use your project examples and go over. Question number 3. How do you identify stakeholders? This is another commonly asked question. The interviewer would ask, once you join the project, what would be your approach for identifying the stakeholders? Listed below are a few techniques. First one, contacting business sponsor. You can get a list of stakeholders by contacting the business sponsor. You can also check with the project manager who would be able to help you with the stakeholder list. Second one, organization charts. You can use the organization charts of the impacted business unit to identify the stakeholder list. Third one, process models. In complex environment where the process is handled by multiple teams, if you can look at the process models, it would help to identify the impacted teams. Fourth one, document analysis. If you look at the existing documents of your organization, you can get the stakeholder list from there. Fifth one, also when you are meeting the identified stakeholders, they will also provide some names during the discussion, and that is another source of getting the impacted stakeholders. In our case study, since it is a small team of people, the business sponsor in our example would be the owner of the restaurant chain who would be able to provide the names of the managers from sales and operations teams, and also based on the discussion with them, we can get additional names. Moving on to question 4. What would happen if you miss a key stakeholder? The interviewer might ask, since there are a lot of stakeholders in a complex program and missing one of you is possible, and what do you think will happen if we miss? Again, it's a good question which emphasizes on the stakeholder management. The answer is, the solution which we are developing may not go live until the requirement of the missing stakeholder is taken care of, causing delays, and it may also result in development and testing rework, as it may have an impact on the existing functionalities. Let us take an example from our case study. What if we did not engage the operations team on the ground who is involved in seating of the customers? Their requirement could have been to have a screen which shows the list of reservations for the given day and the allocated table numbers. In case this is not built, even though everything is ready from a customer perspective, we still cannot go live with the solution until this is built. This would result in developing the screen near to the go live, causing delays and reworks. Hence, it is very important to identify all the impacted stakeholders at the beginning phase of the project. Question number 5. What is a RACI matrix? RACI matrix stands for responsible, accountable, consulted and informed. It provides a view of the responsibilities of the involved stakeholders. Let us take the requirements task in the table as an example to walk through. First one is R, which is responsible. This indicates the person who will be performing the task. As you are all aware, business analyst is a person who will be gathering and documenting the requirements. Hence, in the table, if you can see under the requirements task, it is marked as R for the business analyst. Next is A, or accountable. This is a person who is accountable for the task. In our example, business analyst is responsible for gathering and documenting the requirements, and the project manager is accountable to ensure it is done within the agreed timelines. Project manager is ultimately held accountable and answerable for the successful completion of the task. Next in the line is C, which stands for consulted. This stands for the stakeholders who will be asked to provide information or guidance about the task. In our example, SMA group is marked as C, as they would be the participants of the requirement gathering sessions and the ones who provide the requirements to the business analyst. Next in the list is I, which stands for informed. This is the next group of stakeholders who need to be informed. In our example, I have marked the technical lead and test leads as informed, as they have to be kept informed about the completion of the requirement gathering. Question number 6. What is a stakeholder matrix? Stakeholder matrix is a list of stakeholders, as you can see on the slide. It has the following details of the stakeholder like name, role, their contact details, impact to them due to the change, and also their influence to shape the change. Let us look at the example matrix created for our case study. We have John, who is the restaurant owner and sponsor for this project, who has high impact and high influence. You have to work closely with him and ensure you have his agreement and support on all aspects of the change. Next, we have Jane, who is the operations manager. The change has high impact on her, as she and her team needs to adapt to the new ways of looking up at the reservations and using the tool to seat the customers, but she does not have high influence. However, she and her team are also key end users of this staff side of the application, and Rahul, our BA from the case study, should engage and understand their needs and interests. They can become the goodwill ambassadors for the change. Next up in the line, we have Sean, who is one of our chefs and one who gave a tour of the kitchen and walkthrough of the menu when Rahul visited the restaurant, as there is a next change proposal to enable online delivery, but from the current change there is not much impact to Sean, and hence from an impact perspective we have none, and also he has low influence. He just have to be kept informed at the most on what is happening on the change. Then we have Kaylee, who is the finance manager. She has no impact directly due to the change, but has high influence as she holds the budget. The BA should meet and ensure she is briefed and rally up her interest in this change. Question number 7. What are personas? Personas are fictional characters which represent your typical customers. They are helpful to understand the customer's needs and build the product accordingly. First off, personas would be created based on the brainstorming ideas by the internal team, and post that research is conducted with the actual customers to validate the team's assumptions using a number of requirement gathering techniques. Identifying and validating the needs of the personas are very important to ensure we are building the product which satisfies their need. Let us take two personas for example. First one, the office manager. This is a typical manager who has number of team members reporting to him. There would be quarterly or sometimes monthly team outings, and the manager is responsible for looking for the fun places to have a team lunch or dinner. Their needs are quick snapshot of the service offerings and also a receipt of the bill emailed to them so that they can do claims for reimbursement as all the outings are billed to the company. Second one is the family man who wants to book on the weekends for a brunch, lunch or a dinner. He does not care about the digital copy of the bill but is very keen on the services offered for the kids and the seating arrangements. If you see, just going at the high level, we have got two requirements. First one, soft copy of the bill to be emailed as a PDF. Second one, the service offerings should be shown in the booking app or the website. Again, these two are just assumptions and have to be validated based on the actual customer research. Moving to the last question in the series, question number 8. Tell me about a time when you managed a difficult stakeholder. This is a very common question and I have just listed two of the common scenarios. I bet you would have faced one of these in your project you have worked on. The first one is the conflicting stakeholders. This is very commonly faced where the key stakeholders are not agreeing with a decision or an approach, and without their agreement, we cannot move forward. One of the things which works in this scenario is meeting them separately and identifying their concerns and work on mitigating the same. In our case study, let us consider a scenario where the sales department head wants to only focus on having the website or the application for the customer to make the booking, but the operations head wants to have a fully functional staff-facing portal to help the staff, for which the sales head feels is a wasted effort. Rahul, our BA, can meet both and try to facilitate an agreement. As you see, both of them from their point of view are right. Here Rahul can meet them separately and understand their concerns and explain a workable approach, which in this case can be, in addition to the customer facing website and application, a minimalistic staff facing portal with only some 2 to 3 key functions can be considered. This would be a win-win situation for both the parties. Second one is unavailability of stakeholders. This is a very common problem. You invite the key stakeholders for meeting and they don't turn up. They don't return your phone calls or your emails. There are two approaches for working through this situation. The first one can be in the communication to the stakeholder, whether it is an email or a voicemail. You can explain the importance of the project and the impact and the benefit the change will have on their department. This usually works by getting their attention. Second one can be approaching to connect you with their deputy or any other team member who can help if they are busy at the moment. This is a common issue when dealing with senior stakeholders, and the above two approaches work like charm. Use your project experience and see if you can link them to these two categories while answering.
Hello there. Do you have a business analyst interview coming up shortly? If so, this is the video for you. As you know, a key responsibility or a skill for a business analyst is to elicitate, document, and maintain requirements. And this video is going to help you to discover the top 9 commonly asked questions in business analyst interviews on requirements so that you are well prepared. To make it easier for grasping the concepts in the answers, we're going to use a case study. In this case study, a movie theater chain called XYZ Cinemas is looking to build a digital channel for allowing the customers to book their movie tickets online rather than calling up the customer care, or standing in the long queues and getting their tickets at the ticket counter. So we are going to use this example case study for answering all the questions. Question number one, how do you define a requirement? As per Babcock version 3, a requirement is defined as a usable representation of a need. To simply put, a requirement is an articulation of a business need for solving a problem or capitalizing on a business opportunity. This representation is actually required for the engineering team to develop the solution accordingly to meet the business need. I've listed few of the examples here. So these are different types of requirements which we'll be covering in this video. I just listed it here to give you a view of the requirements. So number one, sales department needs a digital channel for allowing customers to book their movie tickets online. Basically, it's expanding on the case study. Then the system shall display the available seats for a movie show. Systems shall allow the customers to select the available seats. A system should respond within 2 seconds of a user's input. A customer can book a maximum of 10 tickets at one time. So these are all different statements. As I was stating earlier, these are all different types of requirements which we'll be covering shortly. The nature of the representation may be a document or set of documents, and it varies depending on the circumstances and the methodology used in developing a solution. We're going to cover this in question number 9, so stay tuned. Question number 2. What is the difference between a business and a functional requirement? This is one of the tricky questions which is asked in the interview. I'll try to simplify it using the below two tables. First off, business requirement. Business requirements are basically representation of a business need, goal, objective, or outcomes. It represents the what. Example, sales department needs a digital channel for allowing customers to book their movie tickets. It's very high level and it just represent what is required by the sales department. It doesn't give guidance on how it can be achieved. It just represents the what. Functional requirements, on the other side, they describe what a system must do to achieve the business requirements. It represents the how. Example, the system shall display the available seats for a movie show. The system shall allow the customers to select the available seat. Ideally, it talks more on how to meet the business requirement, and you can see it kind of ties back into the business requirement. Question number 3, what is a non-functional requirement? So this question can be asked as a standalone question, or it can be also stated as, can you tell the difference between a functional and a non-functional requirement? So we're going to cover that in this slide now. Non-functional requirement is a quality requirement or a constraint to the solution. So it covers the following aspects. So first one is performance. So what should be the response time for a system to respond to a user's input? So that is captured as part of a non-functional requirement related to performance. The second one would be security, how secure the system or the solution should be. Third one would be the reliability. So there are a few applications or systems which should be up all the time. So we can state that the system should be available 99% of the time. So this would be a reliability non-functional requirement which can be captured. Then the next one would be usability, how easy it is for the users to use the system or the solution which we're developing. The next one would be maintainability, how easy it can to maintain this solution. And on the last one would be related to portability. So these are some few aspects which we are going to document as part of as a non NFR, which is non-functional requirements. for the solution which is being developed. So let's look at an example. The system should respond within 2 seconds of a user's input, so which is a performance NFR. So as we discussed in the previous slide regarding the functional requirement for the system to display the available seats. So if we try to put it together, so a customer should be able to click on a movie show, and within 2 seconds the system should show them with a list of available seats. So that's how we are, tying it together to have a great customer experience. Question number 4: what is a business rule? This is a question where most of the people get it wrong. So let me try to simplify this. As per Babok version 3, a business rule is a specific testable directive that serves as a criterion for guiding behavior, shaping judgments, or making decisions. That's a little complex definition, but to simply put, a business rule is a criterion or a constraint which has to be followed by the solution or the system which we are building. So for example, the XYZ cinemas, they had a business rule that a customer can book only up to a maximum of 10 tickets at a single time while calling up the customer care or standing in the line at the ticket counter. So this ensured that there are plenty of tickets available for everyone. So this business rule has to be taken into consideration while developing this digital solution, digital channel. So this gives rise to a functional requirement for restricting the number of seats which a customer can book at a single point of time. So for example, it can be stated as such, like this, the functional requirement that the system should not allow the customers to select more than 10 available seats. So this is a restriction which we are capturing as part of a functional requirement, which was basically derived from a business rule. Question number 5. What are the requirement elicitation techniques you have used in the past? I can bet you 100% that this question will be asked in each and every business analyst interview. The reason, as I stated earlier, eliciting requirement is one of the key skill and key responsibility of a BA, and the interviewer would definitely love to hear how well you have done it in the past and also what are the different techniques which you have used. I've listed most of the commonly used techniques in this slide, and we're going to cover them one by one. The first one is the workshop. This is one of the highly recommended technique for gathering high quality requirements in a short span of time. I've already made a video on how to run a successful workshop and gather requirements in less than one session. You can check out in the link below, in the description link below. So taking example of XYZ cinemas, if you want to perform capture requirement using workshop technique, then you have to invite all the key people or SMEs from the sales department, customer care department, ticket counter, finance. So all the key people from different departments who are involved in this particular digital solution. So can get everyone into a single session in a room. It can be few hours or even it can be a day. If they are spread across, it can be done via video conferencing or web conferencing. So you have all the participants and you can get the requirements and their views on how the digital solution would be, and it can be captured and for further uh, solution development. Second one is the interview technique. So in case if you're not able to get all these uh, different people from different departments at a single session, then you can schedule separate interview sessions with each of them and try to gather the requirements which they need from this digital solution. So it can be done on an individual basis, and if there are two or more people available, it can be done as a group interview as well. So again, this is also one of the commonly used technique for capturing requirement or eliciting requirements. The third one would be observation. It can be passive or active. So observation, if you take an example, you can walk down to the ticket counter and you can see how the staff is getting the request from the customer and issuing the tickets, like it can show which seats they want, how the customer select. So all these things can be observed and it can be translated as a requirement for the digital channel to kind of mimic this process. So there, as I stated, there are two types of observation: passive and active. Passive is you just stand there and observe and try to gather as much information or requirements. And active is you stand there, observe, but now you can ask question to the staff who's issuing the tickets or who's doing it's like, why are you doing it this way? Is there a reason? It provides more insight and it can be kind of uh, translated to the requirements for the digital channel. The fourth one would be the document analysis. So this can be the documents which are available on the process. It can be the procedures. It can be the business rules. So the business rule which we kind of spoke about in the previous question would be would be found out from this document analysis technique, and it can be translated to a functional requirement. The next one would be the focus groups and the brainstorming. They're more similar to workshops, and it's again done in a similar way. Brainstorming is more of taking one item and trying to get the ideas and the views from people and kind of ranking it them, and again translating into requirements and also the priority of them. The next one would be the process analysis. So the process analysis is looking at the uh, looking at the end-to-end process, if it's already there, if not, creating one and then meeting up with the stakeholder and showing them, okay, this is the process flow, what all the things you need from a digital solution which you are building. Okay, so this is also a good way of capturing the requirements, looking at the end-to-end process so you don't miss out on anything. The next one would be prototyping. Again, if let's say if you want to look at the detailing of the digital solution, you can do a mock-up of the screen navigation flow, and then you can walk up to the stakeholders and ask them, okay, in the screen, what all the elements do you need? Is this better, or do you need a different color to kind of sync up with your brand? So all those detailing can be achieved using the prototype technique. The last one would be survey or questionnaire. This is again used only if you want to collect the response from a huge number of stakeholders. For example, if you want to get a view of which of a feature would be beneficial for the customer, so you can just draft few of the questions and send it across to the entire sales department or customer care department, and then they can select the options and then you can get it back, and that can be used for framing the requirements and also prioritization. So these are some few techniques which I've covered. Definitely, this is a question which would be coming up. So this can be used by, you can answer these questions by using some experience from your previous projects.
Question number 6. What is the difference between verification and validation of a requirement? Another tricky question. So verification refers to ensuring that the requirement meets the quality standards. That is, whether the requirement is clear, is it consistent with other requirements, there's no contradiction, whether the requirement is complete, whether it is testable, whether it is unambiguous, and also whether it's understandable to all the stakeholders involved, the development team, the testing team. So it ensures that the quality of the requirement is good enough for the engineering team to proceed with it. Validation, on the other hand, refers to whether the requirement is kind of aligned to the business need, goal, or outcome, and whether it really supports the needed value. So let's say in our example, if we take a requirement which talks about allowing the customers to book refreshments over a digital channel, it's a good requirement, and it kind of satisfy the verification criteria, but uh, whether is it aligned to the business need or the goal of a digital channel to allow customers to book tickets, I know it's a good feature, but it's not really aligned to that particular high-level business requirement. Hence, when the validation process takes place, this kind of requirement is termed as low priority and can be revisited once the key requirements are delivered.
Question number 7. What is RTM or requirement traceability matrix? So this is one of an important tool or technique which is used to trace requirements. So this provides backward and forward traceability as shown in this diagram, and it helps faster impact analysis and reliable assessment to ensure that all the business requirements are covered. So if we look at this example, RTM or requirement traceability matrix, so the business requirement will be mapped to the stakeholder requirements, stakeholder requirement 1 and 2. So in our example, if we talk about the digital channel for allowing customers to book tickets, the stakeholder requirement number 1 can be related to the customer facing screens and how it allows, and the other stakeholders who can be involved would be the backend team or the back office operations team, and what are the requirements from their side to process the customer's online booking. So that's how the different stakeholders will have a different set of requirements. So the first level of mapping would be with respect to the business requirement and to the stakeholder requirements. And then the stakeholder requirements would be mapped to the functional requirements and also the non-functional requirements, which we spoke about. And then the functional requirements and non-functional requirements in turn would be mapped to the design component. Okay, in order to deliver this functional requirement, what are the design components required? So if you take an example of the screen to show the customers the list of available seats, so the design would involve different screens and also the logic for showing up the available seats. So that all comes under the design, and then the design component maps to the code. So in which a particular language the the code is there. It may be Java, .NET, or it can be any other new technologies like Python. So all of this uh, programming comes under the code, and it is mapped to the design component. And once the code is kind of completed, and then it maps to the test case. So the test case would ensure that um, the code which is developed works accordingly to the requirement. So this kind of gives an end-to-end mapping to ensure that a business requirement is kind of developed and tested. So it's a very useful tool, and this is one of the key things which also used on a day-to-day basis, and it can be asked in an interview.
Hello there. Requirements prioritization. Hmm. This has been a challenge for every business analyst, and it is going to be a challenge in the future as well, because the business stakeholders, they want all the requirements delivered as soon as possible, immediately, possibly in a single release. We know that's not going to happen. If you're having trouble convincing the business on the requirements prioritization, or you would need a technique or a guidance on the prioritization of the requirements, this is the video for you. In this video, we're going to cover the 4 key requirement prioritization techniques, which will help you to communicate with the business and get the highest business value items delivered first. So we are going to cover these 4 key prioritization techniques. So a lot of cover, we can get started. But before I do, I just wanted to tell you that this is one of the video in the Business Analyst Techniques video series. So I've listed the other videos in the description box. So please feel free to go and check it out. And also, if you haven't already subscribed to our YouTube channel, or you're seeing the video for our video for the first time, I would request you to go and hit the subscribe button and also the bell icon, so that you'll be notified when we do a new video. We do a weekly video on business analysis techniques, tools, concepts, and also the interview questions. So let's get started on the requirement prioritization techniques. As always, we'll be using a case study, and using the case study, we'll be driving the concepts of requirement prioritization. Again, this is a case study which we have used in several of our videos because it's very simple and easy for everyone to understand. But if you want me to use a different case study, I'm open to suggestions. Please feel free to comment your case study idea in the comment section and we'll pick it up for the next videos. So in this case study, a movie chain named XYZ Cinemas, they're looking for a mobile app which will allow their customers to book movie tickets online. Simple as that. They don't want the customers to stand in the queue. They just want the customers to use their mobile app, book it, and enjoy the movie. So the features of the app which the client is looking for are registration, customer registration, login feature, the ticket booking ticket feature, and seat selection. So ability for the customers to select the seats in the theater, online payment, and again, number 6 is more of ordering refreshments like popcorn, Coke, within the app itself so that they don't have to stand in the line for buying these. And the 7th feature they're looking for is once the refreshments, popcorn or Coke are ordered, it can be delivered to the seats where the customers are booked using this particular online app. So it's a very good feature set, making the customer's life easy. So this is the features. So let's say how we will be using the requirement prioritization to deliver these features release by release. I know it's good to have everything at one shot, but again, we know it's not feasible. So let's see how we can use the different requirement prioritization technique to prioritize and deliver these in a release wise. Okay, let's get started with the first requirements prioritization technique called Moscow. It's one of the most commonly used technique worldwide. The requirements are basically classified into must, should, could, and would. Must are your mandatory requirements, without which there's no point in even having a release. So they are the highest priority items which has to get in. The next comes the should. The should are basically they're also high priority items, but even if they're not delivered in a release, there are workarounds through which the same functionality can be satisfied. And then we have the could and would. So basically, could and would are nice to have. It's good to get them into release, but if you're not able to make it, that's okay. We can defer it to the next release. So let's see how we can apply this Moscow to our example case study. So if we prioritize the requirements, so the registration, the login, and the book tickets are the must. It's there are key things like the purpose of the app is for the customers to book the tickets online, and the registration and login are a precursor basically in order to book the tickets, right? Whom are we booking against if they're not able to even create an account? And then the seat selection and make payment agree there are again high priority requirements, but without the ability for the customer to select the seats or make online payment, they can still book the seats online, right? The seats will be randomly assigned based on the best possible fit for the number of seats, and also the payment they can walk in and pay the cash. I understand it's not a best customer experience, but we can still go ahead if we just have the book ticket feature and the registration login working fine. Seat selection and make payments can be handled as a workaround, with the cash as we just talked about. And then we have the buying of the popcorn, Coke, and having them delivered to the seat. Yeah, it's really nice to have, but it won't stop the release because the purpose of the app is not to for the customer to order refreshments, but it's basically booking the tickets online. So that is the purpose. That's the reason these two things will become good. So Now, if we have this list sorted, must, should, and could, it's better when you have a discussion with the IT. Okay, you know what? These are our must, these are should, could, and if we have that clarity, it's both good for the from an IT perspective to get the build done. Also, it's good from a business perspective because we are uh, highlighting to the business that the higher value items are being delivered first. So it's a win-win in either way. Okay, moving on to the next technique on our list. The next technique is called ranking. So this is again another commonly used technique. Basically, this comes into place when, let's say we have like 10 must, and then the problem again now comes is IT would have bandwidth only for, let's say, um, 7 of them. So again, we are in a fix. As we have stated in the previous technique, all the must should make it to the release. But now we are going to prioritize further. So that is where this technique comes into play, which is called ranking. Here, you rank those requirements from a scale of 1 to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. And the smallest rated requirements has to go in first. So if we apply this technique to our case study, it would look something like this. So the registration is first, then the login. We have the book tickets functionality is number 3, then the seat selection, make payment, buy refreshment served to the seat. So this is another way or another technique of basically ordering the requirements or the product backlog, because sometimes what will happen is if we go to the business and we still explain them, must, should, and could, they will again tell you, you know what, all these 10s are must. So it'll be again a bottleneck, it'll be a difficult situation. So in that scenario, you can use this technique. Okay, we understand these are must, let's try to rank them. When we rank them, there'll be much more clarity on the highest value or higher value items, so that again, this clarity will help to get those higher value items delivered. Again, a very useful technique and used again commonly worldwide. Okay, let's start to look at the requirement prioritization technique number 3, the Kano analysis. So again, this is a different view of looking at the requirements, and we're going to look at it exclusively from the customer's perspective, who's going to use the product. So here there are 3 factors. One is the basic factors, performance factors, and excitement factors. Basic factors are something like, if you don't have that feature in the app, then the customers are straight off disappointed. They won't even use the particular app or an application. And then we have the performance factors, so which are basically the drawing factor for the customers to use the application or the app. And then they are the next one is excitement factors. So these are basically your differentiator from the competitors and your USP or unique selling proposition. So customers will be like very excited to use the app or the application because of these particular features. So let's try to apply the Kano analysis to our case study. So it looks something like this. The registration, login, book tickets, pretty basic. Without them, there is no point even using the app, because if you're not even to book the tickets, why are we even using the app? And then seat selection and making online payment. Yep, it would be customers would be really happy to use this because they have the ability to select the seats and they don't have to stand in a line again to pay the cash. So they'll be happy to make an online payment, just then get onto the theater, just walk in. And then the refreshments and the refreshments served to the seat, that would be an excitement factor. Basically, the reason for the reason for this is basically, well, again, there is a queue for buying refreshments. So if you're able to do that using the app, then it's like you just walk in after doing the booking. The you've selected the seats, you've made the online payments, and then when you arrive at the time of your choosing, you're getting your popcorn, coke. You don't have to stand anywhere, no line, nothing. Everything is taken care. So that is basically, like it. The customers will be excited to use this particular feature, and because of this there will be more people being driven into this particular cinema, so it will increase the revenue. So these are some things. It's basically a different lens of doing the prioritization. So it's called the Kano analysis, and it's looking mostly from the customer's perspective. And the last technique we have on the list is called user story map. So basically, I've, I've covered thoroughly taking in another case study in one more video. I'm going to link it in the description box, so please go and check it out, where you will be shown how to build a story map from scratch and then to do the prioritization. So it's basically a visual representation of your entire product backlog from the activity sequence of a user. So in our example would be the customer. When they order the book the tickets online, and the time they they walk into the movie theater, watch the movie, and then get out. So this is basically a customer journey, we call it, and there would be tasks below it. So those would be your the user stories. So basically, if you put this in a map, like somewhat we show this is basically an example of a online a home delivery ordering service. So you will be able to visualize it better, and the business will be able to visualize it better, because they will be able to see the end-to-end picture rather than a sequential list. And then we can go again and check with the business. Okay, this is how it is. Can you please which would be the highest benefit we can put 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 the requirements in. So the release one, as we see here, it's called the MVP, or the minimum viable product. So that is like without which you cannot even go in. And then similarly, the other requirements are prioritized to release 2, release 3. It's a similar to what we have seen in the previous techniques, but again this is more visual and gives an end-to-end view for the business, which the other techniques won't give. So again, it's a very useful technique for them to understand and provide the the priorities. So you're basically assisting them to see the end-to-end picture, and which will be really appreciated. Yeah. So these are the 4 techniques, and what we are going to do is I've provided a link in the description for kind of downloading a quick cheat sheet, so you can download it, keep it for your reference, and start using it in your day-to-day job when you're dealing with the requirements and prioritization.
Hello there. In this video, we are going to cover questions pertaining to requirement gathering or elicitation, which is one of the key skills for a business analyst. In the previous video, we discussed identification and types of stakeholders, which is the first key step for business analyst post onboarding to a project. Once the BA has the list of stakeholders, the next step would be to engage them using different requirement gathering sessions to gather the requirements. We will cover the techniques used for gathering business requirements in this video, and will focus on techniques for functional requirements in the next video. So, let's get started with the video. As always, we will use a simple case study which will make the concepts easy to grasp. Rahul is a BA working with a client running a restaurant called Vegan Gardens. The client is looking for a mobile app which will allow their customers to book a table. Moving on to question 1. What are the requirement elicitation techniques you have used in the past? This is one of the most commonly asked questions, and listed below are the commonly used requirement elicitation techniques. Some of them are document analysis, workshops, interviews, observation, focus groups, brainstorming, process analysis, prototyping, survey or questionnaire. We will discuss these techniques in detail in the upcoming questions. Based on your answer, the interviewer will ask deep dive questions on the techniques which you would have mentioned that you have used. So make sure you tell the technique which you have used. Question 2. What is the first elicitation method you would use? The answer in my view would be document analysis. This involves reading the existing documents available related to the project which you are working on. This will help to provide context and background while engaging with the stakeholders through other elicitation techniques. This will help you to identify the current state and the problems faced in the current business unit, process, and others. Going back to our case study, Rahul, our BA on the project, can request for and look into the below documents before engaging with the stakeholders. Organization chart. This would give the background of the people and business unit structure. As Vegan Garden Restaurant has several branches, the organization chart would provide information on number of branches and names of the key people in each branch. User manual and standard operating procedures. This would give Rahul a view of how the current table booking process works and which system is used by the staff. So Rahul will be familiar with the current systems and have a better understanding while speaking with the stakeholders. Rahul can also look at design documents, technical documents, process flows, problem reports, business rule documents, or any previously captured requirement documents which would help, as stated earlier, in understanding the current state and context of the new project. Let us look at question number 3. In your opinion, what do you think is the best elicitation method? There is no right or wrong answer. You can answer based on your experience. In my view, the best elicitation method is the workshop technique, as you can gather high quality business requirements in a short span of time with a variety of stakeholders. The workshop technique involves getting all the key impacted stakeholders from different departments together for an extended period of time, like a day or two, to go over the project details and understanding from each of them what they are looking for as an outcome. Since we have the key stakeholders present, any conflict can be resolved, impacts can be identified, and can easily gain agreement from all the stakeholders at the same place. We will discuss this technique in depth in the next question. Question number 4. Can you tell me about a time when you conducted a workshop? If you have answered that you have used the workshop technique, then interviewer might ask this question to get an insight into your experience. For every requirement elicitation technique, as mentioned in Babcock version 3, it has 3 phases: prepare, conduct, and post the session. Let us consider the workshop in context with our case study. Rahul, our BA, is going to use the workshop technique for gathering the business requirements for the online table reservation system. First off, Rahul needs to prepare for the workshop, which includes setting a clear purpose, which is to gather business requirements for the table reservation system, identifying the key stakeholders and ensuring they are available to attend the workshop. The key stakeholders would include the sponsor, who is the owner of the restaurant, the business managers from different branches, and senior operations staff who are involved in the table booking process currently. Once he has the list of the key stakeholders, he would schedule a place and time convenient for all the key stakeholders. Usually workshop is a full day or 2 days event. The venue should have all the facilities like whiteboard, projector, adequate seating, etc. And refreshments like coffee, snacks should also be arranged. Rahul chooses his company's conference room, which has a seating arrangement for 15 plus people, and invites the key stakeholders there for a full day workshop. He has also arranged for lunch and other refreshments. Next off, Rahul would make and share the agenda with the attendees. Agenda will have sessions or activities for that day so that the stakeholders come prepared. Sample full day agenda would be like this. 9 to 9:30 introductions can happen. 9:30 to 11:15 walkthrough of the current process. 11:15 to 12 break. 11:30 to 1 discussion on the target process design. 1 to 2 lunch break. 2 to 4 gathering the business requirements for the target state. 4 to 4:30, they can have a short break. And again 4:30 to 5, they can have a playback session. The first stage is key. If the preparation is good, then conducting the workshop is pretty easy. Moving to the second stage, conducting the workshop. The stakeholders meet at the venue on the day of the workshop, and Rahul uses the agenda shared earlier to drive the workshop and will try to adhere to the agenda as close as possible. As the workshop progresses, Rahul documents the discussions, requirements, and actions. If help is available, one can also use them for documentation during the workshop. They are referred to as scribe. The last stage is post the workshop, which would include activities like closing out any open actions raised during the workshop. Rahul can then share the captured business requirements for sign-off to the stakeholders. If required, Rahul can arrange a review session with the stakeholders to walk through the requirements captured for obtaining a sign-off. Moving on to the next question, question number 5. What are the challenges faced while using the workshop technique and how would you mitigate it? This is another follow-up question asked on workshop. The major challenge would be non-availability of the key stakeholders. Getting all the required people together for a day or two is by far a difficult task. Some mitigation would be the below approaches. Number 1. Explaining the importance of the workshop and how it will help to shape the system which they are trying to build. Number 2. Rescheduling to a suitable time so that everyone can attend. Number 3. In case a key person is not available, then asking them to send their deputy or a representative from their team. If still we are unable to get everyone together, then covering off with the key stakeholders' individual interview is an option, which we will cover in the next slide. Next question, question number 6. Can you tell me about a time when you conducted an interview? If you have answered that you have used the interview technique, then interviewer might ask this question to get to know more about your experience. Like we spoke for the workshop, the interview elicitation technique has 3 phases: prepare, conduct, post the session. Let us continue with our case study and say one of the key stakeholder, Jim, who is the manager of customer support, could not attend the workshop. Rahul would then use the interview technique for sharing the outcome of the workshop and gather any missing business requirements from the customer support perspective. First off, Rahul needs to prepare for the interview, which includes setting a clear purpose, which is to gather business requirements from a customer support perspective. Schedule a place and time convenient for Jim to attend. Next off, Rahul would make a list of questions like what the customer support staff would like to see in the new system for answering the customer queries, what are the functionalities required in case there is change required by the customer, and so on, and share these questions in the meeting invite to Jim so that he can speak to the team upfront and have the answers ready. As stated earlier, first stage preparation is always the key. If the prep is good, then conducting the interview is pretty easy. Moving to the second stage, it was agreed to have a discussion on the conference call and both Rahul and Jim joined the call for the interview. Rahul briefly touched upon the outcome of the workshop and then used the questions shared earlier to drive the interview process. Rahul used active listening techniques and made notes on the discussions, requirements, and open actions. Once all the questions were covered, Rahul thanked Jim for his time and informed that he will share the minutes of meeting and also the requirements captured for his review and sign-off. Post the workshop, Rahul shared the minutes with open actions and also shared the requirements captured for review and sign-off. Moving on to the next question, question number 7. Can you tell me about a time when you conducted an observation session? If you have answered that you have used observation technique, then interviewer might ask this question to get to know more about your experience. Like we spoke for the previous 2 techniques, The observation elicitation technique also has 3 phases: prepare, conduct, and post the session. Let us go back to our case study. One of the open actions in the workshop was for Rahul to capture a time and motion study. That is, how much time does the current reservation process take, and also document the current steps taken by the staff to complete the booking. Rahul is going to use the observation technique for completing these 2 actions. First off, Rahul needs to prepare for the observation session and he follows the following steps. Setting a clear purpose, which is to document the detailed process used by the staff now and do a time and motion study. Identifying the participants with the help of one of the branch managers and scheduling a convenient time for the session. Share the agenda with the participants upfront so that they are prepared for the session. As always, first stage is the key. If the prep is good, the rest follows easily. Moving to the second stage, Rahul meets the participants at their workplace at the scheduled time and briefs them on the required outcome and the reason for the same. Rahul uses passive observation technique. He captures the start time when a call is made by the customer and end time when the booking is made in the current system. It was around 3 minutes. He then asks the branch manager for a staff to make a note of the time from today so that the average time can be benchmarked and used for presenting back to the sponsor who wants to know this. He also observes a couple of staff and makes note on the steps taken by the staff for making the booking from the time when the customer calls and the booking is done on the system. Once the staff completes the booking, he asks a couple of clarifying questions on the doubts he had on the process. He then thanks the participants for their time and heads back to the office. The last stage is to ensure what he captured is right. He converts the steps into process diagram and sends it to the staff for review, and also follows up on the open action for the average time for booking process from the manager. Question number 8. Another follow-up question on observation. What is the difference between active and passive observations? There are 2 types of observations. First one, active observation. When the staff is performing the steps in the process, if you have any questions, you stop the staff and ask clarifying questions when they are performing that step to gain insights. Point number 2, passive observation. You make a note of all the questions and wait for the staff to complete all the steps in the process and then ask your questions. Active observation is used when you are more interested in specific part of the process, whereas passive is generally used to capture the metrics of the time taken to complete the process and for benchmarking. Question number 9. What is focus group and how to conduct one? This is similar to the workshop. You get the key people together at the same place to get their thoughts and opinions. Going back to our previous video where we discussed about personas, which are fictional characters who represent the typical customers, they are helpful to understand the customer's need and build the product accordingly. Based on brainstorming with the internal team, the requirements would have been logged on what these personas would need. Identifying and validating the needs of the personas are very important to ensure we are building a product which satisfies their need. Focus group is one such technique to use for that. Let us take 2 personas as example. First one, the office manager. This is a typical manager who has number of team members reporting to him. There would be quarterly or sometimes monthly team outings, and the manager is responsible for looking for fun places to have a team lunch or dinner. Their needs are quick snapshot of the service offerings and also the receipt of the bill emailed to them so that they can do claims for reimbursements as all the outings are billed to the company. Second one, family man. One who wants to book on weekends for brunch, lunch or dinner. He does not care about the digital copy of the bill but is very keen on services offered for the kids and the seating arrangements. If you see, just going at a high level, we have got two requirements. First one, soft copy of the bill to be emailed as a PDF. Second one, service offerings should be shown in the booking app or the website. Again, these are just assumptions and has to be validated. Focus group is one of the way to validate the assumptions made. Rahul can get the details of their previous regular customers from both the categories, office manager and family man, and arrange for a focus group session with them to go over the feature of the new online booking system. He also provides perks for participating in the session by giving them free lunch or dinner coupons at the restaurant. Again, similar to the workshop technique, agenda can be shared upfront to these people so that they are prepared. During the session, Rahul uses the agenda and goes over the list of business requirements captured to get their thoughts on each one of them. Rahul makes a note of the participants' feedback. Once all the items in the agenda are complete, then Rahul thanks the participants. Post the focus group session, Rahul compiles the report based on the insight received and shares with the key stakeholders. This would help to understand which business requirements are key to the target audience and which can be discarded or deprioritized. Let us look at question number 10. How can you gather requirements from a large number of people, or they can ask you to tell about a time when you used survey or questionnaire technique? Answer is survey or questionnaire technique. We cannot use any of the techniques we spoke about earlier due to the sheer volume. Continuing with our case study, Rahul wants to get a view on the thoughts of the Vegan Garden's existing customers on the new online booking system before starting the bill to ensure their requirements are satisfied. Going back to our 3 stages. In prepare stage, Rahul would compile a list of question and answer options to send out to the participants. It is important to have options for each question and not have a free text field, as it will be difficult to interpret the answers. Sample questions can be like, do you prefer a mobile app or a web app for making the booking? Do you want to receive reminders on your reservation? Using the questions, Rahul will create an online survey and get the survey link. In conduct stage, Rahul sends an email to 1000 plus existing customers of the restaurant to help to take the survey. He can also provide perks to the customers like discounts for participating in the survey, and it is very important to give a deadline for the customers to complete the survey. Otherwise, we cannot close the activity. Post the deadline date, Rahul can review the results of the survey and compile insights and log them as business requirements.
Hello there. Do you have a business analyst interview coming up shortly? If so, this is the video for you. In this video, we're going to look at the top 9 interview questions asked related to the requirement documents. As you're already aware, eliciting and documenting the requirements are one of the key aspects of a BA role. So the interviewer would be definitely interested in understanding the requirement documents which you have created in your past projects. We have a lot to cover, so let's get started. I can assure you that there are going to be a couple of questions from this video which will be asked in your next business analyst interview. We're going to look at the BRD, FRDs, their contents and structure. We're going to also discuss on RTM, Epic, user stories, their format, and also the acceptance criteria. So it's going to be an informative video, so make sure you watch it till the end. And also, if you have not already subscribed to our channel, please go ahead and subscribe to our channel right now so that you will be notified and you won't miss out on any of our future videos. To make it easier for grasping the concepts in the answers, we're going to use a case study. In this case study, a movie theater chain called XYZ Cinemas is looking to build a digital channel for allowing the customers to book their movie tickets online rather than calling up the customer care or standing in the long queues and getting their tickets at the ticket counter. So we are going to use this example case study for answering all the questions. Okay, let's get started. Question number one, what are the different documents you are prepared for capturing requirements? This question, I would say, is a sure shot one, and it is asked in almost all the business analyst interviews. I've listed the majorly used documents. It varies from company to company, but these are the common ones. So the first one is the BRD, which is the business requirement document. The purpose of this document is to capture the business requirements and the business context of a particular change initiative. The second one is the functional requirement document, which is the FRD. The purpose is to capture the functional and non-functional requirements, and it kind of maps back into the business requirements. Then we have the use case document. Again, the purpose would be to document the use cases, which details the interaction between an actor and the system or the solution which we are trying to build. And then we have the activity diagrams. So this documents the flow of events, the interactions between the user and the system, and also the detailed step-by-step flow, which will help the IT team to build the solution which we're looking for. And then we have the wireframes. So the wireframes are basically used to provide a view of how the screen should should be looking for the customer. So it will be the look and feel, the colors, and also the various user interface items. So all these things would be mocked up into the wireframes. And then we have the epics and user stories. So all the documents which we just spoke about are used in the traditional waterfall model. But in case if a project is using Agile, the requirements are captured in epics, which is again the high level requirements, and then the user stories, which are epics are broken down into user stories. So, and all the use cases, activity diagram, wireframes are all converted into supporting models, and they are basically attached to the user stories or the epics to provide more context and better understanding of what is required to the IT team so that they can build it accordingly. And the last one, common one which is used, is the RTM, which is the requirement traceability matrix. It is basically used to trace the requirements backward and forward, right from the business requirements to the test case and vice versa. We're going to talk about all of these in details in the further slides. Moving on, question number two. What are the contents of BRD, or the business requirement document? Again, this is a question asked to gauge your depth of experience of preparing such kind of documents. So you can use an example to provide the contents of the BRD. And I've listed few of the components here, but again, it varies from company to company, project to project, but these are the few common building blocks. So the first one would be the executive summary. So if you're looking at our example, this summary would state that the business XYZ Cinemas is looking for a digital channel for the customers to book their movie tickets, and the business context will provide why they are looking for this change initiative. Well, here in this context, like it's just to make it more convenient for the customer to book online rather than standing up in the long queues or calling up other customer care and waiting for it to be confirmed. So that is the customer convenience. And also, if you look it from the staff perspective, this can help to free up for some of the staffs who are doing these rules, and they can be allocated to other priorities, other opportunities. And then there will be a current state and target state. Current state will be a basic business process flow, like what's happening now when the customer comes in, goes to the ticket counter, and similarly what happens when they call up the customer care. And the target state will be how the customer, the target state process flow will show the how the customer will be using this digital solution to book the tickets, and how they will be permitted into the cinema halls, the end-to-end business process flow, how the target state would be. So this will give more context to all the stakeholders involved, and also to the engineering team, IT, and the testing team, the development testing team, to understand what is being done and why it is being done. And then the scope section would actually have what are the things which are in scope for now. So let's say if you're looking for the solution, whether we want it to be limited only to, the web app or a web login, or do we want to also develop a mobile app where the customer can book their ticket. So this would be the scope, and it should be pretty clear what is in scope and what is out of scope. And then comes the business and the stakeholder requirements. So these are the requirements which are needed to achieve the target state. So this can talk about the requirements related to the customers able to book the tickets online, and also the cancellations. What are the things the customer can do with the online channel? And also similarly on the staff side, it can be like how the staff can identify these book tickets, how they can let the customer into the hall. So all of these requirements would be under these sections. And then the next one would be the assumption. So what are the assumptions for this initiative? So one of the assumption I can think of is, once this channel is available, the customers will start using it. You know, that's a basic assumption. And then the dependencies, what are some things which have to be in place for this thing to work? And then the business rules, if there's any rules, for example, like they might have a rule that only a maximum of 10 tickets can be booked at one time. So this is a business rule. This can be translated and documented for a functional requirement, and ensure that the digital solution also holds this business rule true. And then the last section would be a glossary, which will just summarize all the abbreviation acronyms used in the whole document. So just to give a view of the person who is reading the document to understand it better. So these are some common sections in a BRD. Moving on, question number 3. What are the contents of a functional requirement document or FRD? So this is similar to our previous question. Again, they want to understand your depth of knowledge in preparing such documents. So quickly going to list out all the common sections which is used in drafting FRD. So first one would be the purpose. Again, what is the purpose of this particular document? Uh, how you can borrow some context from the BRD to put it here. Similarly, the scope section again can be borrowed from the BRD. What is in scope, what is out of scope, so it's very clear. And then comes these functional and non-functional requirements. So these are the system related requirements, and here you'll be documenting what the system should do. In our example, if we take this would talk about how the customer should be able to see the list of shows, the list of seats which are available for each show, and where they can select the seats and also make an online payment. So these are basically a translation of the business requirements into the functional requirements, which basically again what you want the system to do, and these are all linked back to the business requirements. Similarly, a business rule which we spoke about, the maximum of 10 seats can be booked, that also can be translated to a functional requirement, ensuring only 10 seats can be booked online. And then we come to the non-functional requirements. So these are the requirements related to the performance, the security, stability of this online solution. So one such example is responsiveness. We want the solution, the system to respond within 2 seconds of the user's input. So for example, user selects a date, within 2 seconds, the customer should be able to see the next screen. So that's one example of it. Then the assumptions we just spoke about. And then the major chunk of this document would be the supporting models, which will provide more context to the engineering team and helping them to understand how we want the solution to work so that they can build it accordingly and test it as well. So this is about the use case diagrams, activity diagrams, mockups, which we just spoke about earlier. So all of these would comprise will be part of a FRD. And then the last one is a glossary, again just to provide more context on the acronyms and the abbreviations used. Question number 4. What is the format and contents of an epic? So far we discussed about the waterfall methodology and the documents used. When we come to Agile, it's very document light and all the requirements are captured in the form of epic or user stories. Epics are at high level and then they are broken down into detailed user stories. So I've listed down the key components of an epic in this slide. Ideally, in essence, what an epic has is who, what, and why. Who requires it? What is required? Why is it required? So this is kind of a format which is uh, used to capture the requirements. So a template which I provided, which is a commonly industry-wide format which is used across, as a who requires it, I want what is required, so that why is it required. So that's a format. If you look at an example, as a customer, I want to pay for my movie tickets online so that I don't have to stand in queue to pay cash at the movie theater. So this is again a customer convenience requirement where we are talking about the ability for the customer to pay online for the movie tickets which they have booked. So it captures the requirement in this particular format, and it also has some additional information like priority. What is the priority of the requirement? Is it a must, should, or a could? Or if you're using ranking, it can be prioritized as 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., etc. So it all helps in the prioritization of the backlog so that the highest value item is delivered first. And then this has the business context, so it provides more context on why this particular requirement is listed in first place. So all the things which we spoke about in BRD, so those things can be added here as a business context. And then it has links to the detailed user stories. So if you look at an epic, it gives a high level requirement of what is required. In the next slide, we'll speak about the detailed user stories. Question number 5, what is the format and contents of an user story? So we are building upon from the previous question, which is the epic, and these are the detailed user stories. So the format of a user story is very similar to the epic: who, what, and why. So what I try to provide as an example is the epic spoke about how the customer should be able to pay online, and in these two user stories we are breaking down it further. So if you look at the first one, as a customer, I want to pay online using my debit or credit card for my movie tickets. Again, he wants to avoid standing in queue. The second user story talks about customers' ability to pay online using the online banking portal. So for example, they don't want to use a credit card, they want to use their online banking, net banking portal. So this breaks down the epic into more details of the channel which the customer wants to use. We can still have more user stories like the mobile wallets, PayPal, etc., etc. So this kind of gives you a view how an epic is kind of linked to the user story and what is the format. And the user story also has like additional information like the priority, similarly must, should, could, or high, medium, low, again 1, 2, 3, 4 ranking. And then it will also have the epic which is linked to, and then the acceptance criteria which we speak about in the next slide, and also the supporting models. So the use cases, activity diagrams, the mockups which we spoke earlier, all of them would be created and attached to the user story as a supporting model to provide more context and more information to the engineering team to build the solution. Question number 6. What is an acceptance criteria and its format? As discussed in the previous question, acceptance criteria is a part of our user story, and it's a very important part. It basically states the condition or outcome which has to be satisfied in order for a solution to be acceptable to the business stakeholders. So it's very key in terms of coming up with the QA test scripts and also the UAT test scripts. So it's a very vital component of a user story. When we look at the template or the format, so usually the acceptance criteria are also given as a one-line statement. In an example, demonstrate that the customer is able to pay using their debit or credit card. But that's a very high level statement, and in order to make it more robust and ensure that everybody gets a clear understanding, this is the format which you see on the screen. It's based off BDD, behavior driven development. So the format is given a context: when an event happens, then what is the outcome which is expected. So if you translate that to an example based on the user story which we just discussed, given customer has selected the show and selected their seats, when they are on the payment page of the digital solution, then they should be able to pay online using their debit or credit card. So it clearly spells out what is the context, what is the event, and then what should happen. So it's very clear to everyone, the developers and also the testing team, what the outcome we are looking for and what condition, and it ensures that we build a solution according to the business requirements.
Question number 7. What is RTM or requirement traceability matrix? So this is one of an important tool or technique which is used to trace requirements. So this provides backward and forward traceability as shown in this diagram, and it helps faster impact analysis and reliable assessment to ensure that all the business requirements are covered. So if we look at this example, RTM or requirement traceability matrix, so the business requirement will be mapped to the stakeholder requirement 1 and 2. So in our example, if we talk about the digital channel for allowing customers to book tickets, the stakeholder requirement number 1 can be related to the customer facing screens and how it allows, and the other stakeholders who can be involved would be the backend team or the back office operations team, and what are the requirements from their side to process the customer's online booking. So that's how the different stakeholders will have a different set of requirements. So the first level of mapping will be with respect to the business requirement and to the stakeholder requirements. And then the stakeholder requirements would be mapped to the functional requirements and also the non-functional requirements, which we spoke about. And then the functional requirements and non-functional requirements in turn would be mapped to the design component. Okay, in order to deliver this functional requirement, what are the design components required? So if you take an example of the screen to show the customers the list of available seats, so the design would involve different screens and also the logic for showing up the available seats. So that all comes under the design, and then the design component maps to the code. So in which a particular language the the code is there. It may be Java, .NET, or it can be any other new technologies like Python. So all of this uh, programming comes under the code, and it is mapped to the design component. And once the code is kind of completed, and then it maps to the test case. So the test case would ensure that um, the code which is developed works accordingly to the requirement. So this kind of gives an end-to-end mapping to ensure that a business requirement is kind of developed and tested. So it's a very useful tool, and this is one of the key things which also used on a day-to-day basis, and it can be asked in an interview.
Moving on, question number 8. What are the different visual models you've created for documenting requirements? So this is another key questions which keeps getting repeated in the business analyst interview. So I've listed the major ones used, but there are much more visual models which have been used. So I'll be creating another video only dedicated to this. But in this video, I'm just going to quickly cover off the commonly used ones. The first one is the use case diagram, which kind of documents the interactions between the user and the system which we are building. What are the different things a user can do, functions with the user can perform using the system. Then there is the activity diagram, which again captures the interaction between the user and the system in a very detailed way. Let's say example, if the if the customer selects on uh, the particular show, what happens? What is the screen which is shown to the customer? Let's say it is the seat selection. Let's say customer proceeds without selecting a seat, then there should be an error message which should be thrown. So all of these things are kind of captured as part of the activity diagrams. And then it comes the wireframes. So this is basically the look and feel of the screens. So how the screen should look, what are the colors, what are the components which should be available to the customer in the screen. So all of this visual part are handled using the wireframes. Then we have the prototypes, which is similar to the wireframes, but this kind of gives a journey in a visual way. If the customer clicks on one button on one screen, then what is the next screen which is popping up? If they click on this, what is the next screen which is popping up? Which kind of, it's a storyboard which is very easy for the developers to visualize while they're building the solution, and also for the testers to test the solution. And then we have the business process flows. It's the end-to-end flow, basically. What happens when the event is started, who are the actors, they are depicted by swim lanes, what are the actions which are taken by the customers, by the staff on the business side. So all of these things are visually represented as part of the business process flows. And the last one, key one, is the data flow diagrams. Basically, these are more of a technical in nature, which shows how the data flows from which is the source, and how it's getting captured in the backend database. So these are some key things and commonly used visual models. If you feel there are any similar ones which are very key and used widely, please comment in the comment box, and I'll pick it up while I'm creating the other video. Moving on to the last question, question number 9. What are the tools you have used for documenting requirements? So this is one of those tricky questions where the BAs might not be prepared while facing the interview. So I've just listed it out here. So predominantly, most of the requirements are captured using uh, the MS Office tools. If you're following the waterfall model, Word, the FRDs and BRDs are captured in the Word document, and the the PowerPoints can be used for presenting these key parts to the stakeholders for either sign off or just to present and get their views on. And then Excel is used for the requirement traceability. So it's more or less all the business analysts work heavily on MS Office, and then there's a SharePoint where all these documents are commonly maintained. So it's like requirements management is done using the SharePoint, which all these documents which we spoke about. If you're using waterfall, but if you're using agile methodology, I think most of the things are on Jira. The epics are created on Jira, the user stories are created on Jira, acceptance criteria is documented as part of the user stories, and all the supporting models, like we spoke about, the mockups, the use cases, activity diagrams, all would be just part of the Jira. And Confluence is also used extensively where I want to make provide more notes or more context. So Jira and Confluence are the key tools in the Agile methodology. And there is this requisite pro. This is also one of the requirements management tool, which is used. And then we have the Visio and Eris. So these are the business process modeling tools. So you can create business process models using that. And Visio is extensively, it can be used for your activity diagram, use case diagrams, any type of diagrams, and the mockups can be created using Visio, PowerPoint, and also MS Paint. And then if you want to go little high tech on the tools for capturing the business process models and all the different diagrams, the visual models, I think Lucid Chart is one tool uh, which have all the pre-built templates and can be used uh, readily, and it can be it can save a lot of time. And then we have Ballismic. This is also, it's a mock-up tool, and it's basically used for creating all these web-based mockups and mobile phone app mockups. So these are the things which commonly used. Again, please comment in the comment box if there are any other tools which you think I've missed out here. Hello there, welcome to this video.
In this video, you're going to discover the top 10 commonly asked questions in interviews on Scrum Agile methodology. If you have an interview coming up shortly, then this is a video for you. Question 1. What are the events ceremonies in Agile methodology? So there are four key events, and we're going to cover those in detail in the upcoming slides. But I'm just going to provide an overview of these four events in this particular question. So we have a sprint planning, which happens during the beginning of the sprint, and then we have the daily scrum, which happens daily during the duration of the sprint. And then we have sprint review and sprint retrospective towards the end of the sprint. So we're going to cover all of these events in detail. So stay tuned. Number 2. So this is again another commonly asked question is the composition of the Scrum team. So ideally the Scrum team comprises of three main roles which are listed in the slide. One is the product owner, two is the Scrum master, and third one is the development team. The development team includes the developers, the testers, or any other IT staff. So all these three roles comprises of a Scrum team. Question number 3. So this question relates to the artifacts in Scrum. As you know, Scrum methodology is basically very light in documentation, but these are the three major are kind of used in the process. So first one is the product backlog. So this contains all the things which relates to be developed for the product, the epics, the user stories, the defects, any other ideas. So all of this goes into the product backlog. And then we have the sprint backlog. So as I was speaking in the question 1 about sprint planning, so the items which deliver most value to the customer based on urgency or based on other factors, so all these items are transferred from product backlog to the sprint backlog, which becomes the scope of that particular sprint and which is used throughout the sprint. The third artifact is basically the product increment, which is delivered in that sprint. It contains the software package, the release notes, and the user manuals on how to use the functionality which was delivered in that particular sprint. So that summarizes the three major artifacts used in the Scrum methodology. Question number 4 is, what is velocity? So ideally, it is the ability of the Scrum team to deliver valuable product increment. So it's basically calculated based on the story points of the backlog items which were delivered in that sprint, or we can term it as done in that particular sprint. So let's say for an example, 41 story points worth of product backlog items were delivered in or completed in sprint 1. So then the velocity of that scrum team can be termed as 41. Let's continue the example. Let's say in sprint 2, the team completes 42. Then they're going to average out 41 and 42 and then use that as a variable in the sprint planning meeting. Basically, this kind of gives an idea of what the team can deliver in a particular sprint, and it's used for planning. So that's the main use of velocity. Question number 5. What is the use of a sprint burn down chart, or what is a sprint burn down chart? So again, this is one of the artifacts used in the process to kind of track how the progress is with respect to the sprint goal, and then kind of adapt to achieve the goal which was planned in the beginning of the sprint. So if we look at the example chart which is given here, it's a 2-week sprint. Let's say it's 14 days worth of days it's tracking. And then the yellow line kind of tracks the story point which needs to be completed on a daily basis to achieve the sprint goal. And then the red kind of signifies what is the actual. So it's basically giving a plan versus actual view. And then
During the daily Scrum meeting, this chart can be referred and the team can adapt or adjust in accordingly to complete this particular sprint goal. So again, it's a very useful metric for tracking progress. Question number 6. So I was telling we'll discuss more in detail of the events. So this is the first of the four events in Scrum process. So which is a sprint planning meeting. So a lot of interviewers will ask what actually happens in those meetings. So what the basically the purpose of this meeting is just to craft a sprint goal and also a plan to achieve it. So the participants would include the Scrum team, the development team, Scrum Master and product owner, and then they will use the product backlog and then pick, okay, these are the product backlog items. Let's see what should we target for this release. So for example, if it's a the team is building a ticket booking app for a movie theater chain. So maybe they would have delivered the basic functionality of login, registration, and booking the tickets, but they wouldn't have the functionality of seat selection by the customer. So that can be one of the major functionality which they can target in the sprint, and that can go, that can be the goal of like that can be the sprint goal. And then that goal can be broken down into the user stories and epics, which will populate the sprint backlog. And also the velocity is used as an input to kind of determine what the team can kind of complete in that sprint. So it's as we discussed in the previous slide, if the team can complete 41 story points worth of items, then in the next sprint also they can use that as a guiding parameter, and then they can keep, okay, we can only do for 41, let's see what we can fit in those things. Yeah. And then using all this inputs, so the output will be the sprint goal. As I was just telling in the example, the seat selection feature can be a sprint goal, and then the sprint backlog, all the epics and the user stories related to that particular functionality can be included in the backlog. And then a sprint burn down chart, which we just looked in the previous slide, can be charted with the planned story point completion throughout the sprint process. Yep. And the question number 7 is the next item, which is the event, which is the daily Scrum meeting. Explained, basically they would ask to explain what happens in the daily Scrum meeting. So this is a daily Scrum, or it's also termed as a stand-up meeting. So the purpose is just to review the team's progress on the sprint goal and adjust the plan to get there. The participants mainly would be the development team and the Scrum Master. Product owner is kind of optional. So it's good to include the product owner, but again, he or she is optional. So the inputs would be the sprint backlog. Okay, these were the items, the user stories, and the tasks which are outstanding for this particular sprint, and also the sprint burn down chart. How is the team progressing? So the progress would be inspected, and if there's any impediments, or I was telling about the blockages, it can be a technical issue or a environmental thing, or there are various factors which will be blocking progress. So those can be identified, and then usually a follow-up call or a follow-up meeting would be set up to work on resolving those impediments. Usually it's all driven by a Scrum Master. Or question number 7. Question number 8 is basically uh, describe what happens in sprint review meeting. So this review meeting happens at the end of the sprint, and ideally the purpose is to just showcase the work which was completed in the sprint to the stakeholders. This meeting will have extended stakeholder list along with the Scrum team, which will include the sponsors, the customers, or the end users, and also the sales team. They would like to see how the product is shaping up, and they also can provide their feedback. So the input again would be the goal. So example, we spoke about like seat selection feature, and then how the feature which was developed. So the usually it will be done by the product owner. They'll the showcase or demo this particular functionality to this extended audience, and then get their feedback, like are they happy with it, or if there's any improvements or any enhancements which can be done, it would be noted down and it will be added to the product backlog. Yep. So that was mainly happens in this review meeting. Again, the product owner also provides a status report and also a forecast of what would be coming in the next sprints, if yeah, and also when there is a release planned. So all those things kind of gets discussed in this particular meeting. And we'll move on to question number 9. So this is the last major event in the Scrum methodology, which is sprint retrospective meeting. So here basically it's the participants or the Scrum team themselves, the development team, the Scrum Master, product owner. The main agenda is to identify how we can make the product development process better, simple. Yeah. So they look at all the impediment list. That's the main thing, so that they can be prepared in the next sprint, and also the review comments which were provided by the stakeholders in the review meeting. So those things can be kept in mind while working on the next sprint, and also the burn down, especially the progress and how what were like what things can be done better in order to hit the plan. So it's more of a looking back, reflecting back, and also looking forward. So those outputs would be the action items for improvements which can be implemented in the upcoming sprints so that there's a better process. Question for this particular video is, again, it's what is definition of done. This is one of a tricky question which is asked, and basically it's an exit criteria which is agreed with the product owner and the development team for marking a backlog item has been completed and it's ready to be shipped. So example, login feature, or one of the feature which we discussed, the seat selection feature. Yeah, it can be only termed as done if it is coded, tested, reviewed, and accepted by the product owner. So this is one of the terminology for an item to be termed as completed. So let's say if the one of the item is only coded and tested, you cannot term it as done. All these factors which have been pre-agreed should be completed in order for an item to be complete termed as done. Hello there. Do you have a business analyst interview coming up shortly? If so, this is the video for you. In this video, we're going to discuss the top 15 commonly asked interview questions on acronyms or BA terminologies used in business analysis, ranging from CRUD, SIPOC, RFQ, RFI, COTS, and much more. We're going to take the term, expand it, and provide its usage with an example so that this will help you to answer the questions in the interview process. We have a lot to cover, so let's get started. Question number 1. What is INVEST? INVEST stands for independent, negotiable, valuable, estimable, small, testable. The INVEST guidelines are used in Agile methodology while writing the user stories. The above criteria ensures a well-written user stories. Let's look at it again. Independent. It talks about the user story being independent of the other user stories. Dependency between user stories create complexity, and wherever possible, we should maintain user story independent of the others. Negotiable. This talks about having a conversation with the team and trying to work out the details of the story accordingly. Valuable. The this talks about the user story should be creating value to the end user, be it the customer or be it the staff who are working with the application. If it doesn't deliver any value, then there is no purpose for a user story to be on the backlog in the first place. So to ensure that the user story creates some value to the end user. Estimable. So this talks about how the user story should be written so that the development team can help can look at the story and come up with estimates. It can be at ballpark, but yeah, it should be able to uh, estimable by the development team so that it helps in the prioritization process and the release planning. Small.
Wherever possible, the story should be broken down into the smallest part of it, and it should not be combined with other features. So wherever possible, it should be limited to a single requirement from an end user or from an internal staff. So it becomes easy for development, testing, and maintenance. The last part is testable. So by looking at the user stories, the testing team should be able to come up with their test scripts and help in their testing process. Ideally, the acceptance criteria helps in this place. Acceptance criteria as part of the user stories can be translated into test cases and can be used by the testing team. Question number 2, what is CRUD? CRUD stands for create, read, update, and delete. So these are the four basic functions to be considered in software development while we're dealing with data. And this same CRUD can be used for drafting, the high-level requirements. If you're looking for an example and you're be tasked to do a requirements for an online food ordering app, even before you are meeting the business, you can just come up with these requirements using CRUD. C stands for create, so customer should be able to place an order. R stands for read, customer should be able to view their order. And U stands for update, customer should be able to update their order. And D stands for delete, customer should be able to cancel their order. So it's a very good technique to ensure that the data is handled end to end, right from creation up to deletion. Question number 3, what is SWOT? SWOT stands for strength, weakness, opportunities, threats. It's a strategic planning technique used to craft out strategies. Let's try to look at this with an example. One of your clients is a business owner and restaurant owner, and he has come to your consulting firm seeking help on uh, you know, how to create a strategy to combat a new restaurant which has come down the corner. So you can use SWOT and help out craft that strategy. So let's look at it. First, we identify what is the strengths of the client. So the restaurant has been for a while, and it's very appreciated for its taste, and also it is highly economical. And there's huge flocks of crowd usually coming during the lunchtime, during the office hours to grab a bite. So that's the strength. If you look at the weakness, the restaurant closes at 8 p.m. Due to not many office going people kind of hang out at that particular restaurant, whereas the new restaurant which is coming up is open till 11 a.m. So if anyone after 8 p.m. wants to kind of hang out, they can go to the new restaurant. So that's a weakness. So one of the strategical point to combat it is maybe open the closing time of the restaurant, extend the closing time of the restaurant maybe to 10 or 11, and see how it works out. And then the opportunities. So this new restaurant bringing up, it opens up for opportunity. One of the opportunities which we can think of is the client's restaurant is in Indian cuisines while the new restaurant is Chinese. So maybe you can just have a conversation with the restaurant owner and try to see if you can cross serve. Maybe they can promote your restaurant. You can tell you if you're an Indian restaurant, you can go down the under and you can do the same vice versa. What's happening is collectively you're trying to, in collaboration, you're trying to grow each other's business. The threat is the new restaurant happens to be better and it's able to serve faster, then I think this particular business will be taken out of. Moving on, question number 4, what is UML? This is a very commonly asked question in the interview sessions. UML stands for Unified Modeling Language. It's basically a standardized modeling language for visualizing and documenting the artifacts of the software programs. Most commonly used UML diagrams are the activity diagrams,
use case diagram, sequence diagrams. So basically these diagrams provide a view to the development team how the interaction between the user and the system should be, which will help them to visualize and come up with a solution accordingly. Question number 5. What is the difference between RFI, RFQ, and RFP? This is one of the commonly asked confusing question in the interview process. I'm just going to try to simplify it in this particular slide. RFI stands for request for information. All we're doing here is reaching out to the different vendors and trying to understand what are the services or the capabilities which the vendor can deliver. Only that, nothing much, just reaching out and trying to understand the services which they provide. RFQ stands for request for quote. This is usually used when you know what you want, you're reaching out to the different vendors to understand what is the cost involved in delivering the solution for that particular requirement. So this involves reaching out to the different vendors, just telling them what you need and trying to get the quote from them for comparison. The last one is RFP. This is the one which is commonly used. This involves kind of a business need or a problem statement. You reach out to vendors and you give them that, and you ask them to come back with their proposal and the cost. So the proposal would basically involve the approach, the tools which they'll be using to solve the business problem statement or achieve the business need, and also the cost involved. So RFP is one of the most commonly used, but there are companies which do use RFI and RFQ as well. Question number 6. What is COTS? COTS stands for commercial off the shelf. COTS systems are developed and maintained by external organization, and they are just implemented as part of the business to meet their business need or solve a problem statement rather than developing their own in-house software system. For example, a business needs a customer relationship management platform. Instead of developing an in-house solution, they can go and get SAP CRM, Zoho CRM, or Salesforce. Similarly, if they want to send out emails to their customers, they can use Aweber, GetResponse, etc. So the idea here is instead of using the time developing in-house system, the business can use a readily available software, and they can get started to address their business need or resolve a problem statement. Moving on to the next question, what is WBS? WBS stands for Work Breakdown Structure. This is a process of decomposition of the task and effort required to complete a project or an objective. So from a BA perspective, let's say you're tasked with a requirement gathering for a particular initiative. So at a high level, the initiative would result in a requirement document, maybe in form of user stories or BRE or the functional requirements. So in order to break down and make it more easy for managing and reporting, maybe you can split that requirement gathering sessions from a customer facing view, and then you can have requirement gathering session with uh, department A, department B, and department C. So you're basically breaking down the requirement gathering process across and having some timelines to it, and also then having a process of documenting the requirements and getting the required sign off. So all of these activities can be broken down and then into small components. It can be planned and managed accordingly. So that provides a more visibility and easy for the individual performing those activities to accomplish. Question number 8. What is SIPOC? SIPOC stands for Suppliers Inputs, Process, Outputs, and Customers. SIPOC diagram is used for defining the scope of a process improvement initiative and also helps to understand the current state and then to work out on the process improvements. So SIPOC ideally basically talks about who the suppliers are,
what are the type of inputs they provide to a process, raw materials, data, etc. And then what is the process which converts the inputs to the required outputs? What are the required outputs? And who are the ultimate users of those outputs? So it's in a simple line, in a table or a diagram, you can understand what's happening currently and can work on the process improvements accordingly.
Question number 9. What is JAD? JAD stands for Joint Application Development. JAD sessions are similar to workshops where you have a variety of stakeholders ranging from the customer, the end user, SMEs, business stakeholders, business analysts, developers, all collaborating together for capturing high quality functional requirements. Basically, you want to, the end result of this particular session would be what what is that the system should do in order to accomplish the business requirements. So that's the whole agenda for this particular sessions, and this provides a good understanding to the development team what is required and also some business context on why it is required so that it will help them to develop the solution accordingly. Question number 10. What is BPMN? BPMN stands for Business Process Model Annotation. BPMN is a methodology or an industry standard language used for visually representing the business process in the form of diagrams. So the business user or a technical developer, if they just look at this business process model, they will be able to understand what is the flow of events, who does what. So usually the business process models are in the form of swim lanes, one actor and all the activities for that actor are confined to a swim lane. So if you're taking an example, you have actor one and actor two, let's say customer and a ticket provider for a movie tickets. So customer walks in, hands over, informs the other ticket counter which show and how many tickets he or she wants to buy, and then the ticket provider will just show them the screen and ask the customer to pick the seats. Once the seats are being picked by the customer, the ticket provider confirms the ticket and then charges informs the customer how much the ticket is. And once the customer pays the money, the ticket is printed out and handed over to the customer. So this back and forth interaction can be easily represented in a business process model. And let's say if a business is trying to take this journey to a digital channel where the customer can book their tickets using phone or online, then this particular process model can be used to model the interaction by the developers. And it's pretty easy. It's all there in a process model. It's easily understandable and can be used accordingly for the development. Question number 11. What is DFD? DFD stands for Data Flow Diagram. So DFD is a visual representation of flow of data through a software system. Again, this really helps the development team during the development process. So let's say if you're working on a reporting requirement, you can provide a view of how the data is captured and where it is stored. So let's say example, the customer data is captured through the front-end screens and it is stored in one particular database. Similarly, the transactional data are recorded in another database, and then which are the fields you can try to capture from which database. So you can provide this view in a data flow diagram, and this will really help the development team to come up with a required solution for the report. Question number 12. Who is an SME? SME stands for subject matter expert. SMEs are invaluable resources for understanding how the current processes work. So they are actually the experts in their own niche or own field. For example, if you're looking at a particular part of the business, the first point of contact would be an SME because they know inside out. They've been in the system for few years. they may be senior team members of the team or business architects, or sometimes even the business analysts who have been working on that particular process for a while would be an SME. The SMEs are really key during the requirement gathering phase. When you're eliciting requirements, they are the point of contact to provide how the current process is and what are the things they would require to make it better. Question number 13. What is RTM? RTM stands for Requirement Traceability Matrix. It's basically a matrix used to trace requirements. It provides the backward and forward traceability, and it helps in faster impact analysis and reliable assessment to ensure all the business requirements are uh, designed, developed, and tested. So let's look at an example in the below diagram. We have a business requirement. It's mapped to the stakeholder requirements 1 and 2, and the stakeholder requirements is further mapped to the functional requirement and non-functional requirement. And then the functional requirement in turn is mapped to the design component, which traces to the code, whichever language it can be written, Java, .NET, Python, and then that particular code, then it maps up to a test case. So if you just look at this particular diagram in a matrix, we can ensure that a business requirement here and stakeholder requirement here is 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 designed, developed, and tested. So this provides an end-to-end view and ensures that everything is covered. Question number 14. What is ROI? ROI stands for return on investment. This is a very important metric and it measures the return of investment relative to the investment cost. And this is again, as I stated, it's a very important metric for approval of a project or an initiative. Let's take an example. If there are a certain number of users performing a certain activity, and let's say on an yearly basis that uh, amount is around $100,000 spent year on year for that particular activity, and if there is a proposal for automating that part, and the cost for implementing the solution would be, let's say, $50,000, and then year on year maintenance cost of $10,000. So if you look at a 5-year time frame, without implementing this solution, the cost would be around $500,000, $100,000 year on year. But if we implement this solution, the total of cost for 5 years would be $100,000, $50,000 for first year, and then 10, 10, 10, 10 for the subsequent years. Sorry, it's $90,000. So when you're looking at 5-year time frame, with implementation of the solution, it's $90,000. Without implementation of the solution, it's $500,000. So there's a clear benefit of 410,000 saved due to implementing this particular proposed solution. So when you present these figures to the business, it's easy for them to take a decision for providing the funding and go ahead for a project or initiative. Moving on to the last question, question number 15. What is UAT? I believe most of you guys already know the answer, but I just wanted to cover it off. The UAT stands for User Acceptance Testing. UAT is performed by the business end users of that particular application, and they check whether the developed software works in line with their business requirements. And the business analyst role in this part would be to assist the end users to perform UAT by helping them with the test cases, test scripts, raising a defect management or defect resolution, and also to clarify whether a certain request which is raised during UAT, whether it's part of the initial requirement or is it a scope creep. Hello there. Do you have a business analyst interview coming up shortly? If so, this is one of the videos for you. In this video, we're going to cover the top 11 interview questions asked on SQL queries. You may be wondering, why would they ask SQL query in a business analyst interview?
If you're appearing for a role of a system analyst, IT business analyst, or in a techno-functional role, then definitely there will be questions on SQL. So this video will help you prepare for the interview. And also having a techno-functional expertise is always considered a plus during the hiring process. So we have a lot to cover. Let's get started. Before we proceed further, I would request you to please go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you have not already done so, and also please go ahead and click on the bell icon so that you will be notified when we will be uploading a new video in the Business Analyst interview series. We're planning to upload 10 more videos, so please go ahead and click on the bell icon so that you're notified whenever we upload it. Okay, let's get started. As we usually do, we take a case study and then answer the questions using the case study. So in this case study, we are going to have a company, a e-commerce company, which is selling electronics like mobile phone, laptop, and tablet. And this is a particular table in their database called orders, which kind of records who's the customer, what have they ordered, what is the value of the order, in which city they have ordered, and also the mode of payment. Is it cash, PayPal, or credit cards? So we're going to use this table, and then we're going to derive the queries and also look at the results. Question number one. How do you retrieve all records from a table? So this is one of the most commonly asked and the basic question anyone will ask you in an interview. So the SQL query for that is select star from table name. So in our example, the table name is orders. So that's why it's select star from orders. And the result would be all the rows and the fields which we saw in the table would be displayed. Question number two. How do you retrieve only customer name and order value fields? So the select star displayed all the fields from the table. Now the interviewer will be checking your knowledge on how would you retrieve certain fields which are of interest to you. So here the customer name and the order value. So the SQL query for that is select name which is for the customer name, and value which is for the order value from orders, the table. The result would be as such. So now if you see, the result will have only two fields or two columns corresponding to the customer name and the order value. It won't show all the fields which are from the table. So this will help to focus while you're doing the analysis when you're looking for only certain values, certain fields and their values. Question number three. How do you retrieve only customers with order value more than $500? So this is again some conditionality is being placed into the question. So the SQL query for this is we're going to select the name and the order value from the table, but we're going to add a conditionality, which is where value is greater than 500. So what this will do is it will only filter out the rows with order value more than $500. So from our previous example, we had 7 rows, but now there's only 4 rows displayed because only 4 rows for these four customers, the order value is greater than $500. Again, this will help you while performing the analysis, and that's why these are the questions which the interviewer will ask, so that to kind of gauge your depth understanding in the SQL queries. Question number four. How do you retrieve only customers with order value more than 500 and from ordered from Seattle, which is a city? So again, building upon from the previous question, here we are further fine tweaking the conditionality and getting a narrower result. So the SQL query for this remains the same as what we saw in the previous question. Only the additional thing is where value is 500 and city equal to Seattle. So, and city equal to Seattle will be the additional part in the SQL query, which will give us a result as such, where we had 4 rows from the previous query, but this query will return only 1, because this is the only row which satisfies both these conditions, where the value is greater than 500 and also the customer ordered from Seattle. So that's why we are again fine tuning it. So these are all again conditional conditional questions which will be asked to gauge your understanding on SQL queries. Most of the time it will be based on scenario. They won't just ask, can you give me an example with this and that? How do you filter? It'll be most on a business scenario, so that they understand that you understand the concept of how do you take a business query and business requirement and translate it into a SQL query. Moving on, question number 5. So again, we are asking, how do you retrieve only customers with order value more than $500 or mode is cash? Again, these are all conditionalities, but here it's or conditionality, either this or that. So we'll look at the query. It is the same as what we saw previously. The only change is after value is greater than 500, we have a or clause and then mode equal to cash. So we are interested in customers with order value more than 500 or who has paid in cash. So the query will return as such. If you see, there are 5 rows here, and I want to point out the row number 2, Smith. Even though his order value is less than 500, which is 450, because his cash mode, the mode is cash, the SQL query will return this particular result. Moving on, question number 7. So here the question would be, how do you retrieve customers whose order value is between 100 and 500? So this is a range question. I think we covered values. Now this is a range. So the SQL query for this is again name value from orders, but we're going to use a clause called between. So we're going to use a where value between 100 and 500. So what this SQL query will basically retrieve is all the order values ranging from 100 to 500, and the result would kind of look like this. So these are the 3 records which are having a value greater than 100 but lesser than 500. So this is again really useful when you're doing the analysis and also translating the business requirement into functional specs, and also sometimes the ITBAs provide uh, inputs to the technical spec, and that's where all these queries will come in handy. Pushing forward, question number 7, how do you retrieve only customers ordered from Seattle and Baltimore? So the previous question was more of a range, and this question is values. If the value equals to this or that, how it will happen. So one of the syntax we can use is the in syntax. So we select name city from orders remain the same, but the where conditionality changes with city in Seattle, Baltimore. So which will result the records or the rows of customers ordered from Seattle or Baltimore. Okay, moving on, question number 8. So this is a very interesting question. How do you find the total number of rec orders? So the interviewer might just ask, how do you find the total number of orders in the database? So the syntax for that is count star. So if you hit select count star from orders, it will give you the number of records from the table. So in our case study or example, we had 7 records, and that's the reason the result would have written 7. Question number 9, how do you insert an order to the table? So this is, so we all the queries we looked at till now is more of fetching the data. So this query would be insertion or addition of a order of a record to the table. So let's see the SQL query for the same. So this is the query, insert into orders, which is the table name,
and we're going to list down all the fields of the particular table: order number, name, category, value, city, and mode. And then we are going to input the values which we are going to add to these particular fields using the values syntax. And then we give order number is 8, name of the customer is Jane, the category of purchase is mobile, value of the purchase is 300, city from the purchase where the purchase is made is New York, and the mode of payment is cash. So this is a query. Once the query is executed, the result would look like this. The table would have an additional row, which is the last row, or order number 8, and all the parameters which we have supplied as values will be added to that particular row of the table. Question number 10. How do you update an order value? So we looked at fetching the records, then we looked at how we add a record to a table. Let's say we have added a record to a table, but the value is not correct, it's incorrect due to an error. So we can use the SQL query with update to update it to the correct value. So the syntax would be something like this: update orders, set city equal to Baltimore. So the city we had entered as part of the insertion was New York, but which was incorrect. Actually, the customer ordered from Baltimore. So now that's why we are updating it using set city is equal to Baltimore, where order number is 8. So this order number where order number is equal to 8 is the clause. Basically, it will search for this particular record. We know it's unique because order number is unique, and then it will look for the city and replace whatever value with Baltimore. So post the execution of this query, order number 8 would look something like this. Everything will be the same except the city would be updated from New York to Baltimore. Question number 11, the last question in this video. How do you find customers with minimum and maximum order value? So it's just again an query for analysis. So if you want to find what is a minimum order value, the syntax is select min value, which is the field name, from orders. So this would result in 225 because this is the minimum order value in the orders table. Similarly, if you want to look at what is the maximum value, we want to find out what is the maximum order value, then the syntax is similar. Select, instead of min, it will be max value, which is a field from the orders table, and the result would be 1000. So if you've seen earlier, 1000 is the highest order value placed by a customer till now, and that's the reason 1000 would be returned. So again, these are all kind of analysis queries, and it can be comes in handy during the analysis phase. So that's about it from a questions and answers perspective. So it's only 11 questions. Again, as I told earlier, these are all very simple queries, but if you don't get this right, you won't progress further in the interview. The interviewer might not be even interested to ask more. So I know these are basics, but it's always good to revise the basics. And in the next two videos, I'll be covering most the more advanced SQL queries and also some more concepts of SQL like RDBMS. What are the different types of keys, primary key, for foreign key, all those things I'll be covering in the next set of videos. So please make sure you subscribe to this to our YouTube channel and click on the bell icon so that whenever we load it, you'll be notified. Question number 3. What are the different levels of testing? This is one of the questions asked to gauge your knowledge of different types of testing across the software development lifecycle. Let's look at it. I've summarized it in this particular diagram. So the first level of testing is called the unit testing, and it is done by the developers. So once they've written the code, they check if everything works fine as per the requirement. The second level of testing is called SIT, or system integration testing. So once the unit testing is successful, it's deployed to the SIT region,
and SRE environment, and then the testers would be performing the system integration testing just to ensure the connectivity works and all the test cases and test scenarios which are written against the requirement works well. And the third level of testing is called UAT, or user acceptance testing. So this is done by the business users. So these are the end users of the application which is being developed, and these are the users who would have provided the requirements in the first place. So they will be doing it, or there'll be a representative from the business team who will be doing it on their behalf. So they'll be checking whether the application developed satisfies their requirements. And once everything is successful, then the the code moves to the production environment. So the go live or the deployment to production usually happens on a weekend, and once the code is deployed to production, there will be a couple of people from the business team, the end users, will be checking whether the code works fine in the live environment. So there's no hiccups, there's no, at least the basic critical test cases would be executed by them to ensure everything works fine. So this type of testing is called live testing. There are different names to it, but the concept remains the same. So these are the different levels of testing. Hope it helps on understanding the concepts involved there. In this video, you're going to look at a variety of topics from business analyst role in testing, creation of test plan, RTM, test scenarios and test case creation, and also the different testing tools used. And also, we're going to look at all these questions from a view of a business analyst. So this is a really a different view than all the other videos which we have on testing, interview, and questions. And this talks in specific and in relation to a business analyst. And also, if you have not already subscribed to our channel, I would request you to please go ahead and subscribe to our Prefix BA YouTube channel so that you're notified when we come up with the next video. We have a lot of cover, so let's get started. To make it easier for grasping the concepts in the answers, we're going to use a case study. In this case study, a movie theater chain called XYZ Cinemas is looking to build a digital channel for allowing the customers to book their movie tickets online rather than calling up the customer care or standing in the long queues and getting their tickets at the ticket counter. So we are going to use this example case study for answering all the questions. Question number one, what is the role of a business analyst during testing phase? This is a sure shot question, and 90% of the time this question would be asked in the interview. So there are two major testing phases. One will be the SIT, system integration testing. The other one will be the UAT, user acceptance testing. So we're going to look at the roles and responsibilities of a business analyst during these two key testing phases. So let's start with SIT. So the first key responsibility of a business analyst would be the walkthrough of the requirements to the testers. So the business analyst will explain what the requirement is, answer any questions from the testers so they understand what is being required and what is being developed. And then the testers will go back and come back with the test scenarios and test cases, and that is the second task for a business analyst, to review them and ensure that they have got the scenarios and the test cases right for all the requirements, which leads us to the third point, which is checking requirements traceability. We're going to talk about more on this in the subsequent slide when we talk about the requirements traceability metrics, but here just to this step is done to ensure that all the requirements are having a subsequent test scenario or a test case. And then the other key part or key role is when the test execution happens, once a defect has been logged by the testing team, it is assigned to the business analyst first to ensure that the defect is valid before it gets assigned to the development team. If it is an invalid defect, like invalid scenario, or the testers might not have understood it correctly, then it can be rejected by the business analyst then and there, so that the time of the development team is not wasted. So it's like a defect triage. It's done by the business analyst. The last key thing is articulating business impact and assisting in defect prioritization. Let's say if there are like 10 defects and there'll be a question asked, what is the priority of the defects? Because we might not be in a position to fix everything by the development team. Then it becomes the responsibility of a business analyst to get the business impact for all those defects and then assign the priority 1, 2, 3 so that it makes it easier for the development team to get it done. And if there are further defects, it can be pushed over to the next release, which are not very critical or high. So that's on the SIT. Coming to the UAT, I think most of the things what we discussed holds good for UAT as well. The walkthroughs, the reviews, traceability, validity of the defects, and articulating business impact. Along with that, this is where there will be additional things asked by a business analyst. That is here, creation of the test scenarios and test cases. So as you know, the UAT is done by the business users, and they are not very equipped with testing concepts or testing, or they might not have the time because they're doing UAT in addition to their day job. So there will be requests raised for the business analyst to create the test scenarios and test cases. So this is where your knowledge of scenarios and test cases will come in handy. And the other one would be test management and reporting. Again, due to the lack of bandwidth by the business users, so the management, like the test planning, creation of schedule, strategy, environment setup, all of those things would come as a responsibility of a business analyst, and also the daily reporting and ensuring the high priority defects are being resolved. So all those management is being asked to be done by the business analyst. Ideally, these were a traditional role of a test manager, but nowadays the trend has been the business analysts are being asked to pitch in. So having knowledge of these will give you an edge over the other candidates in the interview process. Question number 2: what is functional and regression testing? I know there are a lot of different types of testing: sanity testing, load testing, performance testing, etc., etc. But with respect to business analysts, these are the key or two key types of testing, which is functional and regression. So let's look at them quickly. First one is functional testing. This refers to testing of functionalities developed as part of that current release. So these are the new functionalities which are delivered, and testing of those functionalities is referred to as functional testing. Regression testing. So this refers to testing of the existing functionalities and to ensure that they still work fine post addition of these new functionalities to the application. So this is usually done at the end of the test cycle. Let's try to look at these with an example. So again, the example refers to our case study, and the new release delivers the online payment functionality to the customers. So prior to this release, customers were using the application to book movie tickets. Post booking the tickets, they would used to get a confirmation, and then they used to give the confirmation to the ticket counter and make the payment either using cash, debit card, or pay mobile wallets at the ticket counter. Suppose this release, the customers can make online payments through the application itself, so they don't have to take the confirmation, go to the ticket counter, and all of those things. So it's much more simplified and a better customer experience, right? So let's look at what is functional and regression testing in this example. Functional testing. So this refers to the online payment functionality which is being deployed as part of the current release. So it's a new functionality. So testing of that is known as functional testing. Regression testing. So testing of the functionalities which were already existing, which is like registering, login, seat selection for the movies. So all of these are existing functionalities and they still need to work post the deployment of the online payment functionality. So testing of those existing functionality is referred to as regression testing. So these are the key types of two types of testing, and which would be asked by the interviewer. Question number 4: what is a test scenario? A test scenario refers to a particular functionality which needs to be tested. As simple as that. So test scenarios can be created using use cases if your project is using waterfall methodology, or acceptance criteria if your project is using agile methodology. So if the business asks you Can you create test scenarios? There's no need to panic. All you have to do is translate the use cases slash acceptance criteria to test scenarios. As simple as that. Let's look at a couple of examples to give a wider context. So again, these examples are taken from our case study. So test scenario number one, check the search functionality for the movies. So this scenario basically talks about where the customer can enter a keyword and the appropriate movie appears in the listing. Test scenario number two, check the availability of seats for a particular movie. So this is where the customer logs in, selects the movie, the timings, and then goes to a screen where it shows which seats are available or which seats are not for selection. So the seats which are available may be in white and the seats which are not available can be grayed out. Test scenario number three, check for the online payment functionality. So this is a functionality where the customers can pay using credit card, debit card, PayPal, or any mobile wallets. So if you see all these scenarios, test scenarios are basically either use cases or acceptance criteria. So if a need arises for you to create a test scenario, it's as simple as translating the use cases or acceptance criteria. Question number five, what is a test case or the components of test case? So this question is another commonly asked one. So test case is defined as a series of actions executed to verify a particular functionality. So basically this is an extension of the test scenario. So these are the steps taken by the tester to verify whether the test scenario is as per the expectation. So let's look at it using an example. So if you look at the test scenario, which was check the availability of seats for a particular movie, let's see how a test case for it looks like. So there will be a test case name, so can be test the seat availability display, and then this table and the columns are pretty key here. So it has the step number, description, expected result, actual result, pass, fail, defect ID. So this answers what are the components of a test case if asked. Uh, these are the key information, key columns. There can be additional columns used by the SIT testers, but again, if it's from a UAT perspective and you're preparing a test case, this is more than sufficient. So let's look at the example. So step number one and the description. So the description is like enter the XYZ Cinema URL. What is the expected result? This XYZ Cinema's website should open in a browser. And step number two, search for a movie. Expected result is the search movie should appear with an image and the name. Step number three, click on the movie name or image. Once it is clicked, the expected result will be the timing should be displayed. And then the last step is to click on a particular time, and here is where the key key expected result is, which is the seating arrangement should be displayed with the available seats in white and the reserved seats or the book seats already grayed out. So this is the expected result. So you're doing all the steps involved to come to step number four to check whether the available seats are shown in white, yeah, and can be clicked. So this is how a test case looks like, or these are the components of test case. So this can be used to answer the question if asked in the interview. And if the business asks you to prepare a test case, you can use the same template to prepare one for the business. In the next slide, we're going to look at the test execution and how the remaining columns are filled. So let's look at it in the next slide. Previous slide, if a question is asked, what happens in the execution? So you can use this explanation as a reference. Let's say a business user is executing this particular test case as part of the UAT. The actual result, pass, fail, and defect ID, the last three columns should be updated as part of the execution. So if you go by this, so the first step was to enter the URL for the XYZ cinemas. The website should open, which it did. And then the second step was to search for a movie. The actual result was once it was searched, the movie with the image was displayed, the relevant movie which the customer was, which the tester was searching for. And then once the movie was clicked, the timing should have been displayed, which was displayed in this execution cycle. So once these steps are successful, which is the actual result is as per the expected result, then the pass fail column should be updated with pass pass pass, indicating that these steps were successful. Let's look at the last step, where once the particular time is clicked, the seats available seats should be shown in white. But what was observed was all the seats were grayed out, even the available seats, so which is a fail. So this particular step was not successful. So when this happens, the tester needs to indicate it by fail, by updating the pass fail column as fail, and then a defect has to be raised. So a tool which is used for defect management, Jira, QC, whatever is used in the particular project, a defect has to be raised. The defect usually contains what is the defect, what is the problem, expected actual results, what were the steps taken. All of this information is already available, it can be taken here and copy pasted there, and also accompanying screenshots. So this will help for further investigation of the defect. We're going to look at the defect life cycle in the next question, but just wanted to give you a view of what all the key components of raising a defect. So this is what happens in the execution. So if there's any question asked, so this explanation can be used to answer it. Question number 6, explain the defect life cycle. So this is one of the most commonly asked question in the interviews on testing. So let's look at it. So it all starts with a defect being raised by the testing team. It can be SIT or it can be UAT, the business user. The life cycle remains the same. So the defect is raised. I've indicated the status of the defect by the highlighted yellow box. The status of the defect will be new. And before going to the next step, it's very crucial and critical that these components are present in the defect, which is the description of the defect, what exactly is the problem, and what was the expected result, what is the actual results, and what was the steps taken to execute this particular test case, and then the screenshots, the relevant screenshot. So this will really help uh, the analysis of the defect to be very faster. So once the defect is raised, it's usually assigned to the business analyst. So it's your job to first check whether all of these components are available. If not, first and foremost, you have to inform the testers to add all these components. So it comes to the business analyst. The business analyst first checks whether it's valid or not, whether it is as per the requirement or the testers are testing something which is out of scope. So if it's valid, then it gets assigned to the development team, and the status of the defect gets changed to assigned. And in case if it's not valid, the business analyst rejects the defect, stating it's invalid and also the reason for rejection, and the status of the defect goes to rejected. And then once it is assigned to the development team, the team will check the validity of the defect first. If it's not valid, maybe it's test data error or environment, then it gets rejected as invalid with the reasons specified by the development team. But in case it's valid, it goes further investigations are done by the development team. So the first check is to check whether if there's any duplicate defect already out there. So this is more common when if you're doing testing of an application for a global rollout. So there will be multiple countries involved or multiple stakeholders testing the same thing. What would happen in that scenario is there would be multiple testing teams testing the same functionality, and there are a lot of cases where there might be duplicate defects. So they'll check whether it's duplicate or not. If it's duplicate, they will tag it to the original defect or the defect which was raised first, and the status of this particular defect will be a duplicate. And then let's say it's not a duplicate, they will check whether they're able to fix it. So there are several reasons where the development team might not be able to fix a defect. One of them would be the time constraint. Let's say that a defect is raised 3 days until the end of the testing cycle, or 2 days, or on the last day. So this doesn't give the development team enough time to fix it. Or if a defect is too complex to fix, maybe it requires architectural changes. So there are a variety of reasons where they won't be able to fix it in that particular release. Then those type of defects would be deferred to the next release, and the status of that particular defect would be deferred. And then let's say they're able to fix it, If they're able to fix it, uh, then they would resolve the fix, and then they will deploy the fix. So once this deployed, the fix is deployed, the status will change to fixed, indicating the testing team to retest the defect. So the defect will be retested if the defect is fixed or not. If it's not fixed, it will be reassigned back to the development team with stating the same thing, the providing the retest results, the screenshots, etc., etc. Let's say if it is fixed, then the defect will be closed and the status of the defect will be closed. And also there are the other defects, the rejected ones and the duplicate ones are also will be moved to closed eventually. And then this brings us to the end of the defect lifecycle. Again, a very key question. So you can use this and also try to use an example when you explain this to the interviewer. Question number 7. What is the difference between priority and severity? Again, a very commonly asked question, and it's a tricky one. Most of the people get it wrong. And this is a key one for a business analyst because business analysts are involved in the prioritization of a defect. So let's look at it. Priority. Priority basically defines the order in which the defect should be fixed, and it's based on the business value. So let's say there are 10 defects. The priority defines how the development team should be fixing them, and the priority is based on the business value again. So one of the key activities and responsibilities of a business analyst is during the defect management, defect triage, to come up with this priority, so which will help the development team to fix the key defects for the release, so that the release goes as per planned and the lesser priority ones can be taken up in the next release. Severity. So severity is the degree of impact a defect has on the operation of the application. So this is the functionalities impact. So if a key functionality doesn't work, the severity is very high, and severity is based on the impact to functionality. So there are again priority and severity are two different things, but it may look the same, but they're two different things. Let me try to explain this with an example, and this is also again a commonly asked question. Can you tell me an example of high priority and low severity? So one of the things is the company logo is wrong. So there is no key impact to any functionality if a company logo is wrong. So the severity is very low, but the priority is high because if the company logo is not correct one, if the customers who are visiting the XYZ Cinemas online booking website, they may think, you know what, this is not the website, or this may be a scammy website, or there are a lot of thoughts, and this will prevent the usage of this particular online booking service by the customers. So from a business perspective, it is a very high priority and it needs to be fixed. So this is one of the key examples which can be given. The other one is high severity and low priority. So the footer links on the online booking platform does not work. Let's say for an example. So they don't work. And from uh, a functionality perspective, URL not working is a high severity. But if the online booking URL, if it's not working, like if they click on book tickets, if that doesn't work, then again it becomes high priority. But if the footer links does not work, it becomes low priority. The reason being is most of the customers don't use it. Let's say 90% of the customers don't click on the footer links. So in case if it's not being fixed on this particular release due to the resource or time constraint, it can be fixed in the next release. So it becomes a low priority. So this is the difference, and you can use examples from your own past projects, so that will add more value while answering this particular question. Moving on to question number 8. What is RTM, or requirement traceability matrix? We covered this in a couple of our videos earlier, but I'm going to cover it today just from a testing perspective. So as you know, it's a matrix used to trace requirements backward and forward. From a testing perspective, what is required here is you have to ensure that all the business requirements are covered as part of testing, which is the mapping of the requirements to the test cases. So if we look at an example, the business requirement would be mapped to the stakeholder requirements, and stakeholder requirement would be mapped to the functional and non-functional requirement, and then the functional requirements which would be mapped to the test scenarios, and test scenarios will be mapped to the test cases. So this is the key part. And when as a business analyst, as we spoke about in the first question, that is one of the key responsibilities of a BA is to review the test cases and ensure that it all covers all the requirements. So you can use the requirement traceability matrix to do that. So you can map all the test scenarios and test cases and ensure that everything is covered as part of the test cycle, both from an SIT and also can be used from a UAT perspective. This brings us to question number 9, the last question. What are the tools used in testing? So this particular question is asked used to just test your exposure to testing related activities and also the artifacts. You can just pick and choose from the table here to answer this particular question. So the test strategy, test plan, documentation is done by MS Word. We didn't cover this as part of the video. This is another thing, it might require a video on its own. But test plan, test strategy is basically a document which provides the approach which would be used for testing, the testings which are in scope, the schedule, when will the testing will happen, in scope, out scope, and also the roles and responsibilities and reporting. But it's a video on its own, so that's the reason I didn't cover it here. But it's all done using MS Word. And then the test cases documentation, the test case which we discussed, so the documentation is done using QC or ALM. So these are the tools used. If there's no tool used, then it will be just MS Office, which is the Excel, and then the Google Sheets if the company doesn't use Office and they just wanted to use uh, the Google Suite, then Google Sheets is used. And then for execution, QC or ALM is used. So in the tool itself, once the test cases are done, instead of updating it on an Excel spreadsheet, the testers can update it directly in the tool itself, and reporting is very quick. You can just export the whole results for you used on the test execution update done to QC or ALM. So that's one key tool. And then the defect logging. So we discussed the defect lifecycle, and there are a lot of tools in the market for defect management and logging defects. So the common used ones are Jira in case of Agile. If it's waterfall, still the QC ALM is used, and we have Bugzilla and ClearQuest. So these are some common use tools which have come up in the recent past. And then for screenshots for defects, so I've stated that the screenshots are very key for defect management. And for screenshots, we have some sniping tools like Snagit, Light Shot, Screen Taker. If nothing works, you can just take a screenshot and edit it using MS Paint. So this helps to provide more details in the defect for the business analyst or also the development team for quicker resolution. And in case if there's database testing involved, then Toad or SQL is commonly used. So these are some commonly used tools. You can just pick and choose based on your experience while answering this particular question. Wow, that's a long video. I didn't expect it when I started filming, but thanks so much for sticking around to this point. Did you enjoy this video? If so, I would request you to go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel and also download the Business Analyst Interview Guide. So there's a link in the description. You can click on it and download it. It will have over 50 plus questions, again, commonly asked questions, which will help you to smash your next business analyst interview. So please go ahead and download it and use it as a prep material for your next business analyst interview. And also, I request you again to subscribe to our channel. We post videos regularly on business analyst techniques, tools, tutorials, and also interview prep. So until I speak to you in the next video, thank you so much for listening to this particular video. See you around, and bye-bye.